Good evening, crafting friends. I'm Dorene Decibus from It Begins with Ink and Paper, and welcome to Fun Fold Friday. So happy that you're able to be with me on this terribly cold day, and it's supposed to be a terribly cold night. I hope it is much warmer where you are. All right, so tonight we are going to make a beautifully gold embossed Christmas card. And of course, we're using the Peaceful Evergreen set. Not quite done with this set yet. I just love it. And I'm also using the Peaceful Seasons sentiment set as well. So this is the card we're going to be making. It is a card that is, I'm going to give credit to Tammy White. She is a demonstrator from Massachusetts, and though I watched her video and I'm making mine differently than hers, there's a step that it didn't make sense, so I did it my way, and I'm of course using different paper and embellishments and all that good stuff, but this is what the inside flip looks like. So it's on the outside, and then all of a sudden it's on the inside. So it's this little flip, and we're going to be making this mechanism. It's so easy to make, and you'll be able to see how we did that. And so it covers up what's inside. Hi, Bonnie. Thanks for joining me tonight. And then when it opens up, you get to see both the inside and the outside at the same time. All right, so let's get started and talk about what you need for materials. So I have here a piece of cherry cobbler cardstock, and we're going to be scoring this. I'll give you the scoring measurements in just a minute. You're also going to need, we're going to use 2 designs of the season of Elegance Designer Series paper, another one of my favorite papers. So this piece is 4 1/8 by 5 3. Use some gold foil. Let me show you. I just had it out what I had left. I have 1 piece of gold foil left, and I thought I had it right here by my desk, but I don't see it. It's about the size of this. So I'm going to be adding something to the inside of the card. So I already did the die cutting, and I took it right from the pieces that I'm going to use as a background. That way I saved on my gold foil, and I am going to hide it up with the Designer Series paper, with very vanilla cardstock. So we'll be using 2 pieces of this, and let me see, I can tell you exactly what it measures. It measures 4 1/4 by 2 1/2. So 2 of those. I'm going to need 2 pieces of very vanilla, and this measures 4 by 2 1/4. So we'll be stamping and embossing on that. I'm going to need 2 other pieces of Designer Series paper, and I'm using a different color for this, and it measures 4 3/8 by 2 1/8. And then I need this piece right here that is going to help make our mechanism, and it measures 4 1/2 by 2 3/4. So that's what I'm going to need to create this card. So let's get started. I am going to be using my paper cutter to do the scoring because we have to do a little cutting too. So I am going to be scoring this at 2 1/4 and 5 1/2. So again, this is 4 1/4 by 11. So I'm going to be scoring again at 2 1/4. Let's get this lined up. So at 2 1/4. And then at 5 1/2. Now, we're going to do a little bit of cutting. I'm going to take off of on either of these sides, right up to the first score line, 3/4 of an inch. And I love how our paper trimmer is. I have put a piece of white, a piece of the tear and tape right along here. I'll tilt it so you can see that I can see the measurements on this. It just makes it stand out really nicely. And so all I need to do, let me go back to my 3/4 inch. I am going to put this at 2 1/4 inch where I scored it, and I'm going to cut up. So that gives me that first piece. I'm going to turn this, I'm going to do it right up. I'm just going to turn the cardstock over, go in 3/4 inch, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to go to 2 1/4 inches and cut up. So now I have those cut marks right at the score line. So now I'm going to go into the score line. Make sure the score line is lined up nicely. Or to make it easier, I could go into 2 1/4. Let me just move my heat tool. So I'll just go into 2 1/4. And then I am going to go, I'll do this one first. I'm going to go down to that cut line, and I'm going to cut the first piece off. Let me just go up a little more to get it off. And then I'm going to again line this up with the score line and cut off. Okay, so that takes those 2 pieces off. And this is what my card front now looks like. So this is the piece that my panel is going to fit on. Okay, so let me just fold these and give it a good score, good burnish. And before I do my stamping and embossing, I am going to, so you can see how this will flip. I'm going to score it the other way too. It's going to flip back and forth. All right, so I have the card open to this piece here. And again, so when I cut and when I turn it around, this is going to meet this end. So I can do it either upside down like this, or I can attach it right like this. I can use liquid glue, or I can use my Stampin' Seal. I like the Stampin' Seal for this, but liquid glue would give you a little more wiggle room. So if you're a liquid glue person, you probably would want to use your liquid glue. So I'm going to attach this right to the edge. It's the same width, so it's going to fit nicely. There we go. So now when I open it, it goes right to the edge of the card, and you can see that mechanism as it's moving back and forth. So it just makes a really cool card to look at. So now, before I do my embossing, we're going to start on the inside of the card, and I'm going to add my designer series paper. So this piece of paper is going to go right here, and I'm going to just add some adhesive and put that in the card. Now I will tell you, on the inside of the card there's not going to be much room to do some writing. There will be a little bit, but you can always add a piece of very vanilla cardstock to the back and have plenty of room to do your writing. And then I'm going to take a piece of the Old Olive Mossy Meadow Designer Series paper, and a piece of that is going to go on, which way do I like it? I guess like this. A piece of that's going to go on the inside here to this inside panel, and then we're going to flip this open and have this on the inside so we can put the other piece of the green and gold designer series paper. Okay, there we go. So there we have the front of the side, because we need to do our embossing next. And then we can start putting things together. So I'm just going to grab a scrap of paper. I do like to have something under when I'm doing my embossing, so if I spill anything, any of the embossing powder, I've got it right here. I sometimes use my tray. I must say I probably don't use it as much as I probably should. So here's what I want to tell you about embossing. There's a few tools you'll need. You'll need an embossing tool. This is what the heat tool looks like. It is actually a different color. I have the newer one, but my heat tools seem to last forever. I actually had one that I had bought over 30 years ago, and it just died. And then I bought this one when it was new, to have a second one. And then when they brought out the new design, I bought one of those. So I have I have two now because the first one died, but they last forever. The other thing that you are going to need to do the embossing is I just have to recommend this. This is an embossing buddy. It's full of a powder. So when you rub this over your cardstock, it takes away the moisture, your fingerprints, any of the oils that your fingers have put on the cardstock, and it prevents the embossing powder, which is your other thing that you have to have for this, from sticking all over the card. So it really makes your images pop and end up really nice. Now, when I first started stamping, and this was about 31 years ago, I had gone to a teacher's conference on the Cape, and there was someone there who was used a rubber stamp before. I had never even seen this embossing. And I bought everything she had so that I could make some cards. And I showed my parents how to do it. And my mother she was so wowed, because embossing is a big wow. And she and my dad used to help me make my Christmas cards. So I would stamp, my mom would sprinkle the embossing powder on, and my dad would be the embosser. And we just had so much fun, and I have so many wonderful memories of that, I just have to say. So what I am going to do first is stamp my image, my words, at the top of this piece of Very Vanilla. And I'm using Wishing You and Yours, and I'm stamping with a Versamark ink pad. Versamark is very slow drying. The what do I want to say? The ink, the embossing powder will stick to it. So it's really a nice addition to it's. So you have to use some kind of pigment ink. Then I'm going to take my small trees, and I am going to be stamping them along the bottom. And they're going to come right up to the greeting, which is fine. And now that I have everything stamped on this piece that I want, I always make sure I close my Versamark pad, because I don't want to get the embossing powder on it. It makes a huge mess. So, hi Lisa, thanks for joining tonight. I'm generous with my embossing powder because we can just put it right back in the container. Usually just do a little if I get some somewhere. So this is what the image looks like. There's a couple little flecks here at the bottom where I probably touched it. I'm not too worried about those. So I'm going to just set that aside so I can stamp my other piece and get the embossing powder. And then I just use my paper to get that all the way back in. And now I am going to take my second piece, put that aside, and again use my embossing buddy on it. And on this one, I am going to stamp my second greeting, which is Season of Wonder, a season of wonder and happiness. So I'm going to ink this up. And I'm going to stamp that as close to the middle as I can get. Kind of make sure the paper is straight. If it's not, it's okay, because it's a hand stamped card. And now I'm going to just sprinkle onto the greeting. And that looks great. Perfect. Okay, let's get this embossing powder out of the way. And we'll start with the magic. I just love embossing. It's one of my favorite all-time techniques. And I have to say, before I found Stampin' Up, I never stamped with ink. I only embossed everything. I used to buy these jugs of, like, containers of embossing powder that were huge, and I went through them. That's pretty amazing. Okay, so I'm going to just turn on the embossing gun. As soon as it heats up, I don't know how well you'll see it on the screen, but I'll try to hold it up higher. You'll see the magic happen. And there it goes. Just going to turn it to get it away from my finger. The one thing you want to be careful when you're embossing, you can over emboss and take the raised image off, but you get this beautiful raised image on your paper. Isn't that beautiful? And it just shimmers and shines. Okay, we have the other one to emboss as well. I'm going to keep this down. The gun is heated up, but it does have to heat the paper up. And I can see I did overheat an image right in the middle. Not too much, but just a little bit. So there we go, because I'm holding that in the middle too long. All right, so now let's make some of our layers. So we're going to need our trees. Just going to add my adhesive. I do like to put it on all four sides, because one of the things I find when you're embossing is that sometimes the paper will warp a little bit, and that's because, nope, it wasn't. I didn't emboss it all the way. I just rubbed the powder off. There we go. So if I put adhesive on all four sides, then it will flatten right down on the background that I'm going to put it on. but it does dry the paper out a little bit. There we go. So now we'll go back to the front of our card, and this piece here is going to go on the front, just like that. So I'm going to add, this is where I did things a little different. When Tammy White does this, she only attaches it to this, so I'm attaching it to the whole thing. And then this piece is going to be centered on the inside. And by just centering it, it is going to be covered by our front image. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, and I'm going to use a little bit of the liquid glue for this, I am going to attach my trees. Now on my card, because I didn't have enough gold foil, I used the gold mercury paper, and I also used the gold mercury paper for these because I just took it right out of the center. But for this I'm using the gold. That was my goal from the beginning, to use the gold foil, and I've just been going through it. Luckily, I had a piece that was in a package of designer series paper, so I was able to take that. So I'm going to put one tree on the right and have it go up all the way. Whoops, let's just make sure it's going to stay in place. And then I'm going to put this one a little lower just to give it a little extra interest. So this one's going to go off of the yellow, the very vanilla cardstock. So it's a little lower. So you can see what, I'll bring that up close so you can see what that looks like. So pretty putting those, that's one of the dies from the Peaceful Evergreens. All right, and now I have some of the Cherry Cobbler and Pearl Adhesive back gems, and I'm going to put a couple on the front. And this is where I can kind of make two of these right below and one of them up here. And there we have it. This week's fun fold. You've got that inside outside flap. You've got the beautiful designer series paper with all of that gold, and then the gold accents and the gold embossing. We do sell the embossing powder in a 3-pack, so this is the metallic 3-pack. You get silver, gold, and brass, copper with it. And you might not know it, but this little tiny bottle will last you a long time. So that is our Fun Fold Friday for this week. I hope you enjoyed this card. I will be back, of course, next Friday for another edition of Fun Fold Friday. With Christmas being in the middle of the week, I'll be able to I'll be able to keep going with Fun Fold Friday. We won't have to worry about that. And I will be back, of course, Sunday night. We're going to be using the beautiful the Pretty Petals set again, and this week I will be showing you how to make a set of cards. So I hope everyone has a great weekend. Stay warm because it is supposed to be cold, at least where we are. And I will see you either Sunday night or Friday night, both times at 7. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.